October 26th. My name is Nate Corder. I am the education director here at EarthLab and at ESIIL. I'm broadcasting to you live today from my home office in foggy Arvada, Colorado. I've got a sick puppy today, and so folks that were hoping to see me in Boulder, I'm sorry, but I'll be here this morning and this afternoon. Want to welcome everybody. Just want to thank you for being here. We're glad that you're here. We're glad that you're safe. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us. I think it really represents like your level of interest and dedication to ESIIL and to the message that we are trying to get out there. And so we just want to reiterate how thankful that we are to have you here today. Want to remind folks too to kind of remember to keep your microphones muted unless you're talking. And we'll just kind of remind folks to do that. Before we kick things off this morning, we're going to take a couple of minutes to hear from our esteemed leader, Jennifer Balch, director of ESIIL, and she's going to give us some welcoming remarks and talk a little bit about what we're up to at ESIIL and why we're here. And then once Jennifer's done, we'll go through, I'll introduce our team quick, talk a little bit about what we hope to do here today, and then we'll get you started. So Jennifer, I'm going to pass the microphone to you. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Nate. And thanks to the ESIIL team for pulling this all together. So ESIIL, for those of you who haven't yet connected with ESIIL, we are the Environmental Data Science Innovation and Inclusion Lab, which is the National Science Foundation's latest investment in data synthesis. And we're super excited about experimenting with new data and pulling different data constellations together. And this hackathon represents our overarching efforts to do that. And we're excited to give you some powerful compute behind it and to help you learn some data skills along the way that will hopefully increase your confidence with using data and thinking through what are the opportunities to answer the questions in environmental sciences. Yeah, so thank you for joining us and thank you for supporting this effort. And most of all, thank you for investing your time in this. We hope it will be fruitful for you. And we're excited to see where this goes. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for your kind words and leadership. And we're happy to have you here with us this morning. Stick around for as long as you can. And you'll get a chance to see more of Jennifer, I think, throughout the pre-training and at the hackathon and at other ESIIL events. Again, my name is Nathan Corderer. I am the education director here at ESIIL and EarthLab. I'm going to share my screen really quickly just to kind of walk you through a couple of things on the pre-hackathon training webpage. I'm putting a link back in the chat to this. And so this is the webpage that we're working on for the pre-hackathon training. I'm going to share my screen if I can find it here. Sorry for all of my tabs. And so again, like Jennifer mentioned, this is an effort between ESIIL and EarthLab to provide some training for the hackathon that will be taking place November 15th through 17th. Some information here at the top just about what ESIIL is and what we're all about and what you can expect to learn over the course of the next 3 weeks of training. We're going to talk today specifically about how to collaborate in the cloud using Cyverse's Cyberinfrastructure. We're going to talk a little bit about Git and GitHub essentials, and we're going to talk a little bit about R and Python, two very popular programming languages, and how you can use those two things together. There's some other information here. We've got some kind of supplementary links sprinkled throughout here that you may find informative if you'd like to do some additional reading about things like GitHub or the Cyverse discovery environment. We'll be using a tool called Jetstream 2 to get folks up and running as well, and so you can read about that there. And then in the second half of the morning today, we're going to hear about how to use R and Python to do earth and environmental data science. We've got some supplementary links here for anybody that would like to read more about. Let me see if this is the most up-to-date version of this page. Here we go. So we've got some supplementary links here that takes you to our open earth and environmental data science textbook if you'd like to read specifically about how to do different programming operations in R and Python specific to earth and environmental data science. And then Elsa's got some more specific instructions about how we're going to do the second half of the morning here today, which she'll talk more about later. We've also got some links in here to the GitHub repository that we're going to be maintaining for the hackathon and the pre-hackathon training. So we encourage you to check that out. Link to the Cyverse user portal, which Erick, you'll hear more about from Erick here in just a few minutes. We'll send you regularly to look at our open earth and environmental data science textbook. And then we've created a thing called the ESIIL data library for our innovation summit earlier this year that you may find interesting in terms of additional data sets. Although I know that we've got a larger data cube that folks will be working with as well. We have a code of conduct for ESIIL, as well as one that we adopt from the Carpentries for our online virtual data science training. We encourage folks to use welcoming and inclusive language, to be respectful of different viewpoints and experiences, to gracefully accept constructive criticism when it's offered, focus on what is best for this community, and show courtesy and respect toward others and the community members. I'm really briefly going to introduce our team to you, and then I will ask that when our team members get up to speak and present, that they introduce themselves as well. So I'm going to go through this super quick, but we couldn't do any of this without our fearless ESIIL Hackathon coordinator, Virginia Iglesias. And so thank you, Virginia, for helping us get here today and for all the hard work. I'm not going to put Virginia on the spot, but she did promise that when we get to the hackathon in a couple of weeks that she will have the speech ready. And so we'll look out for that. Thank you, Virginia. You're going to hear a lot from my esteemed colleague and partner in crime on the education team, Elsa Culler. She's going to do a lot of the teaching here this morning. Sibylle Amaral is not with us today, but you'll hear from her next week. She's our analytics sub-director at ESIIL and Earth Lab, and she'll be talking to you next week about the data cube and how to do earth and environmental data science. Rachel Lieber is our... You ahead, just make sure you're muted. Rachel Lieber is our community engagement specialist. She helped put this event on, so you've been hearing a lot from her in terms of communication and things. Thank you so much, Rachel, for all that you do to make this happen. I'm Nate Porter, I'm the education director. We've got Erick Verleye, our software developer, who you'll hear from this morning, talking about the Cyverse discovery environment. Our very own friendly neighborhood data scientist, Tuff, is here today, and you'll hear from him more next week when we talk about our data cube. Ayub Grease is going to be here in a couple of weeks to talk about artificial intelligence in earth and environmental data science. And I left him off of the list here because I didn't know he was going to be here, but Tyson Swetnam is our representative from Cyverse at the University of Arizona. He's here as well. I'll make sure to add him to this list. And I think you'll hear from him a little bit later when we talk about R and Python. So that's our team. Again, this is not an individual effort. This is very much a group effort. And so I want to thank everybody for all of your hard work. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Elsa Culler, who is going to kick us off, I think, this morning with a discussion about Git and GitHub. She's going to go for about 20 minutes or so, I think. And then we're going to hand it over to Erick to talk about the Cyverse discovery environment for 20 minutes or so. And then I think the last hour we're going to spend on the R and Python bilingualism piece is kind of the rough agenda that we had talked about last night on Slack. As with everything, that is fluid. And so I'm going to do my best to keep our team on time today and to keep the buses running on schedule. And otherwise, I'm probably not going to do much. I'll keep my eye on the chat. If folks have questions or concerns when they come up, please drop your questions in the chat. Oh yes, Jennifer mentioned that Jim Sinovia, our tribal engagement liaison at ESIIL, is here as well. And so Jim, I'm really glad to have you here as well on our team today. If you have questions or concerns, if you could put those in the chat, myself, Virginia, Ty, we'll be keeping our eye on the chat and we'll do our best to answer questions. If we need to put someone in a breakout room to troubleshoot, we can. My suggestion would be that since this is being recorded, that it might be best to, if you're really stuck, to just kind of sit back and watch and relax. And we are always available to help you offline or in a separate troubleshooting session, and just so know that we're here to help you and to support you. But as questions come up, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them as they come up. So with that, Elsa, how are you feeling? Are you ready to go? Yeah. Okay, Elsa, I will mute myself, hand it over to you. Let me know if you need anything. I don't think we have a break scheduled in here. If you need to get up and move around, please feel free to do that. If we have time, maybe we can take a quick break at the hour, but I think given the way that we operate, we tend to just go. So Elsa, without further ado, I'll take over.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to be talking for about 15 or 20 minutes about GitHub and about how we're suggesting that you collaborate throughout the hackathon in order to avoid problems with GitHub, but also to hopefully avoid problems with the collaboration. So I just put a link into the chat, and then I'm going to share my screen and walk through this document that we have. We're talking about collaboration and Git and GitHub. We use Git and GitHub because they're fantastic tools for collaboration. They let multiple people edit their copies of a project and merge them together later. And this graphic here, which you probably can't quite see, here we go, is from an artist and scientist named Allison Horse, and is showing how you can have this remote repository up here. You can push and pull from that in your local repository, and so can multiple other people. So Git in particular can also be very frustrating to use if you've got multiple people trying to edit the same part of your project at the same time. So this results in merge conflicts. We train a number of students throughout full year here at ESIIL and EarthLab to use Git and GitHub, and when the merge conflicts come up, it really just can derail people's projects. And so if this happens, we can help you deal with it. I want to be clear about that. But we're going to give you some principles of coding that, like I said, I think will help with collaborating well in the hackathon setting, and also should totally avoid this kind of merge conflict situation. Although we're happy to send virtual hugs. With that in mind, I've put together a couple of principles of collaborative coding to help out with this. And so this comes from two places. One, like I said, we really want to avoid problems with Git and GitHub. And number two is that we do have a lot of people here who code a lot in Nate's little informal survey there. But we do have people at all experience levels, and something that we really believe here at ESIIL is that people have things to offer to the project, whether or not they have a lot of expertise with coding. And so we want you to be working together in a way where you're. Oh, how long was I muted? It switched over to someone else.
Like 10 seconds.
Just a second, Elsa. Yeah.
Okay. So what I was saying is that something that we really believe at ESIIL as part of the inclusion is that the potential of someone to contribute to your group is not related to their coding experience level. And so we want you to have tools to be able to work together and use everybody's expertise, including bringing that coding experience in an effective way, and also bringing in experience that others have who maybe don't have much coding experience yet. So the first principle is that we're never code alone. So we're going to recommend working with your hackathon team that you use pair or group programming to bring together contributions from several people. And so what that means in this context is that you will designate one person. I'm calling them the typist. And the reason that I'm calling them the typist is because that's what they're doing, is they're typing what the group tells them to do. They're not sitting there coding by themselves. And the typist, of course, can also contribute to the code, but they have to verbally get the rest of their team on the board before they can type that into their file. Number two is I guess I covered 1 and 3 together. Number 2 is really about Git and GitHub, which is that nobody else should be editing the file that the typist is working on in any version of the code repository until the typist has committed and pushed their changes back to GitHub. So that will require a little bit of communication on your part to make sure that nobody else is working on the file at the same time, and will help us avoid Git pain. And then finally, the other people, I'm calling them code architects. They're going to be contributing by figuring out how to structure the code and then making suggestions to the typist. They can also contribute by doing research or writing pseudocode or flow diagrams to help structure the code and to help the typist know what to type. And this pair programming, I know probably some of you have done it before, and probably some of you have never done it before and have had a lot of success not doing pair programming before. This is really a commitment to the quality of your code and also to inclusivity in ESIIL using this kind of method. The second principle is that we are going to want you to write modular code, and that can mean a lot of different things. But in this particular situation, oh, my formatting didn't quite work out here. I'll have to go in and change that. But we're suggesting that you're going to have a group of 7. That's really too many to do pair or group programming. So we suggest splitting those up, and then each subgroup will have 1 file so that you can follow the rule about only one person editing 1 file at a time. Git and GitHub should be able to merge changes that were made in different files, no problem. And then in order to work together, the kind of modular part of this is that we're going to recommend saving data to files or databases to transfer between groups. And that you agree in advance on how to format that data. And that's what we're going to practice in the second hour of this training, is doing a short workflow where you save some intermediate data and then put that, have that picked up by the other person in your group of 2. Okay, and so we're going to work on some of these skills later today. So hopefully that makes sense to folks, and I think as we start working on it, it's going to be I'm hoping really help all of you to improve your coding and your collaboration skills. I wanted to talk about GitHub just a little bit. We're going to be using a tool called GitHub Classroom today that's going to make a repository specifically for the activity that we're doing in the second hour. But for the hackathon itself, you probably will want to make your own repository on GitHub. And so I'm going to make a kind of example repository and try to show you some of the collaboration tools that are available. I'm going to extend my screen too, because GitHub doesn't always display nicely in a really narrow screen. So there's tons of ways to make a new repository. One is on github.com to click this new repository button. And you could choose to be the owner of your repository, or you could put it in one of our ESIIL organizations. I'm not gonna, we'll probably, I assume that Virginia has a plan for that. And I'm gonna call this my hackathon demo repository. And then I want to put a description. I'm going to leave this public. You could decide as a group to keep yours private, but I think in the spirit of the hackathon, like probably most people will want to leave this public, and it also means that other people can see your work on the internet. We're going to add a README file. This is going to help your team kind of organize what the repository is about, and it's also going to help other people looking at your repository to know what your repository is about. So we'll suggest that you go in and edit that and put a description. And then this git ignore template, this is going to depend on what programming language you want to use. And so, for example, if we choose Python here for the Python folks in the crowd, then that means that if you're working in a Jupyter notebook, for example, and it wants to create those .ipython checkpoints files, if you've ever seen those, then those won't get added to your repository, which will help keep your repository nice and lean and make sure that you don't have really big files that are changing a lot in there. And you can also apply a license. You can do this later too. We generally go for the MIT license unless you have like specific preferences about it. And this is a pretty nice site that, well, you have to, the choosealicense.com is a pretty nice site for learning about different licenses. I'm going to go ahead and create this repository here. And so when we're talking about collaboration, there's a number of different like levels of collaboration on GitHub. So some of you who have a lot of coding experience may use things like branches and forks and pull requests in order to manage contributions from multiple people. We want to focus on the Earth data science here for the hackathon. So that's why I'm suggesting this pair programming and modular coding approach, so that, again, only one person modifies one file at one time, rather than using branches or pull requests. But if you have a group where all of you know how to do that, then please feel free to select a project manager in your group and go ahead and do that kind of workflow. So the collaboration that we're going to talk about is going to look a little bit more like we're going to want you to be able to get the code out of the repository and onto somewhere in the cloud in Cyverse that we're going to talk about. And so to do that, you want to click on this code button, and then you're able to get a URL to clone the repository. Clone is like make a copy of it, either with HTTPS or with SSH, and we'll tell you which one of those you need once you get into Cyverse. There's a little copy button here. So this allows everybody to have their own copy of the code and to interact with it. And then just going back here really quickly, I think we're mostly going to be using kind of graphical user interfaces for interacting with Git, which sometimes collapse some of these steps. But I wanted to bring your attention back to this diagram where we have like the working directory and the staging area, and then committing to the local repository, and then pushing up here. So this is Git trying to make sure that you don't have any regrets, that you didn't push something up to the remote repository that you didn't intend to. And it's maybe a little bit overkill for these small scientific projects, but it's how Git works. And so you'll often find that when you're trying to get your changes back up to the remote repo, there's going to be a bunch of different steps, and they may have different names depending on the tool that you're using. But one of them is, but it's going to be basically an adding step where you put it in the staging area, a committing step where you record the changes in the repository's record of all of the changes going back in time. And then finally, the push step where you're actually sending your code up to the remote repository, which in this case is GitHub. If that doesn't totally make sense right now, that's totally fine. Git is very, very complicated, and it's pretty hard to use. It's one of the harder skills in data science, but it gives you so many great advantages in terms of keeping track of all your changes over time and collaborating with people. So I think I'm nearing the end of my time. I wanted to point out a couple of other features on GitHub for you all when you're working with your teams. Everybody has a wiki in their repository, so anybody would be able to edit this and, you know, put stuff in the wiki. So we use this a lot at Earth Lab and ESIIL in order to keep track of our documentation. And then in the settings, now I'm going to have to sign in. So if you have this two-factor authentication enabled, then you may run into this step too. Here we go. Let's see. All right, it's not as obvious as I was hoping. GitHub also has a discussion feature. So, and GitHub has really great documentation. So if you're ever wondering how to do stuff, I really recommend searching for it. So here we are searching. So we go to settings. Yeah, I'm there. And then features. That's a little bit counterintuitive, isn't it? I think it wants me to go to my personal settings here. And then let's check this one more time. No, under your repository name, click settings. So I was in the right spot. Okay. And then scroll down to the features section. Okay. Maybe it's in general. Here we go. Features. So wikis are allowed here. Issues are allowed here. This is another great way to collaborate. And discussions. I'm going to enable the discussions as well. And so now there's a discussions tab on here where you can talk to each other. And one last thing before Nate brings out the sheep hook is in issues and in discussions, you can always tag another person, and you can tag issues in places that are not issues. You can tag pull requests if you're using those, and you can tag people. And so to tag an issue, I would use a hash sign, but I don't have any other issues here. To tag a person, I could go ahead and I think it's spelled a little weirdly. So I'm just going to tag myself because I'm the only person working on this repository. And then this will send me a message about this issue that I'm submitting. Same thing with the discussions. If I make a new discussion and tag myself in there, then that means I'll get a notification about it. And to get people to come up in the autocomplete list here, you'll go over to settings and collaborators, and then I could add people, for example. Nate could be a collaborator on this repository, and then he will, once he accepts that, he will show up as an option for tagging. So that's a lot of stuff. I really am just wanting you all to be aware of some of these features that are available on GitHub, so that if later down the line you're thinking, oh man, it would be really great if we could send messages to each other, or we could like ask each other offline, you know, when we're not in the Zoom room together about some problem that we're having. I just want you to be aware of those, so then you can like come and ask us, hey, how do you do that thing again? Or look it up on the internet. Yeah, I'm going to stop there.
All right, Elsa, thank you so much. Anybody have any quick questions or comments about what Elsa just talked about there related to some of the features in GitHub that we like to use?
Could we maybe add a quick survey to your Google Sheet about how many people already have a GitHub account, and maybe a second question about how many people regularly use that account? I reposted the link to the Google Sheet in case some of you were late, and we just added another poll question, and we just want to get an idea of what experience you have with GitHub.
Also, if you're a person who doesn't have a GitHub account, this might be a great time to make one. So I'm going to put the sign up link in the chat as well. Since we are going to be using GitHub for the hackathon activities.
Cool. So yeah, Ty, I added that survey item to the doc. Do you have a GitHub? And if so, how often do you use it? Sometimes, not very much, regularly. So if you could go ahead and let us know about your GitHub use in that doc, that would be so helpful. And Ty did put a link back in the chat to.
It looks like we have a lot of people who already have GitHub accounts, which is really nice. And it looks like we have maybe 40% of the people who use it at least once a week, 40% who use it sometimes, and 20% who never use it.
Love it. I feel like before I came to EarthLab, I was definitely in that never category. And now I'm probably more in like the sometimes often. Kind of depends on what week we are in and where we're at in the semester. So thanks everybody for the feedback. Elsa, great job. Thank you so much. Didn't need to bring out the sheep hook or the giraffe hook. And now I think we're right on schedule. What I'd like to do next is turn it over to our good friend, Erick Verleye, ESIIL software developer, to talk a little bit about the Cyverse discovery environment. We also have Tyson here from Cyverse, and so I'm not sure if Tyson's gonna hop in or not, but he's here. But I know Erick can handle this on his own one way or another. So Erick, how are you feeling? Are you ready to rock, my friend?
Yeah, ready to go.
All right, systems go. All right, Erick, I'm going to turn it over to you. Give you about a half an hour or so. If that's about as much as you need, Erick, take what you need, and then we'll have the last hour or so to do the R and Python lesson. So Erick, take it away, my friend.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, and Tyson, please feel free to jump in if I miss anything or just want to say something. But it's really important today that we get everybody signed up for a Cyverse account. Some of you probably already have Cyverse accounts. Some of you probably need to sign up. So I'm going to put the link in the chat right now.
I got it. It's in there.
Oh, cool. Okay, awesome. And if you haven't already signed up, please, when you do sign up, try to create the account with the email that you use to register for the hackathon. We've pre-enrolled people into the hackathon workshop with that email. If you can't remember, or it's just not going to work out, it's not a big deal. We can add you shortly. But okay, so I'll give everyone just a little bit of time to either log in or to create their account. And then I guess I should talk a little bit about Cyverse. Or Tyson, do you want to just give an intro?
Yeah, one quick point. When you create your account, make sure that you set your password, and it's going to send you an email confirmation, and you need to approve that. Yeah, I can talk about Cyverse. So I'm a research professor at University of Arizona. I'm the co-PI of Cyverse. Cyverse is a 15-year-old cyber infrastructure project that's been funded by the National Science Foundation to help life scientists and life science broadly. We have over 100,000 registered users, and this platform that we're going to be using in a few minutes is something called our discovery environment, which is a data science workbench, and it's a place where we're trying to make the cloud feel like your personal computer. But it looks like Erick's going to go through the user portal first. So after you've created your user account, you'll need to go to the workshops tab. Erick, can you maybe make your fonts bigger? Kind of small.
Yeah, let me try to just go like full screen. I don't know if that's gonna.
Okay, so maybe a quick show of thumbs up or positive check marks on the reactions after you have created your account. And if you have a red X, it means you need help. And we may, if you fall too far behind, it's okay. You can just watch for today. And we can drop into maybe a breakout room and get you set up while they're going on the RStudio stuff. So this dashboard that Erick is working in right now, on the left side, you guys will see a workshops tab, and you'll want to click on the workshop called ESIIL Environmental Mosaic, and then either click on enroll, or if you're already, I think it should just ask you to enroll. And then we'll go through and approve you in just a minute. The reason we're doing this is that Cyverse has a subscription system in place, and we need to approve your account to give you access to some of the toys. And if you already have an account, you still need to sign up for the workshop partly for our records and our reporting.
Yep, so this is primarily what we're going to use for the workshop, for the hackathon. And it'll be, for most people, it's going to give you way more computing power than you have locally. It's also going to help with collaboration because you'll have the exact same environment and UIs, everybody else on your team. So,
is the ESIIL Environmental Mosaic workshop public? Some folks are saying they can't see it. So Erick, can you maybe go back to the workshops form?
I believe it's number 138, so the link would be like that. And put this in
It should be underneath upcoming workshops. It looks different for Erick because he's an owner.
And you can also, I think you can go directly to that workshop/138.
Yeah, it's public.
There. Yep.
Yeah, so we'll explain in a minute, but right now the URL for Cyverse that we're working in is the user portal, and it's user.cyverse.org. In a minute, we're going to transfer over to the discovery environment, and that's going to change the URL to de.cyverse.org. And I've just gone through and approved a few users that had just requested.
Yeah, Jennifer, it has a lot of the same capabilities. It's just a public resource. It's an alternative to something private like Google or Microsoft.
Yeah, and I'll just add that places like Google's Colab and like maybe you've used MyBinder before, those are free resources. And Cyverse is the equivalent of like if you were to pay to go and get really large resources, but it's a public research infrastructure and it's free to you all.
Okay, so we got 31 participants now. Is anyone having trouble? Anybody can't sign in or? Waiting for.
It may take a minute or two to get the confirmation email. And if it takes more than a few minutes, then I will send a message to our team in Slack just to make sure they're going out.
Okay. I guess we'll maybe just give like 1 more minute for that, and then we'll move on to the discovery environment, and show how to use Cyverse. And then a little bit on GitHub authentication within Cyverse. For anyone that hasn't received an email, do you want to just put your email in the Google sheet?
Yeah, if you
Before
can
we
put your email in the Google Sheet or in the chat here, and then I'm gonna go and see if I can get it.
Cool. Make sure to get that all straightened out. But for everyone that has been able to create an account and enroll, I guess for anyone who hasn't, just if you'd like to follow along, we're going to go into the discovery environment now and create a virtual machine, connection to a virtual machine, so we can start doing some computing. So once you press on the discovery environment, and this is where you'll be in de.cyverse.org now instead of user.cyverse.org. You're going to want to go to apps here on the left side, and then you're going to see this list of featured apps. So there's a lot of different apps you can choose from, but the one that primarily going to use for the hackathon is going to be this Jupyter Lab Geospatial app. So what this is going to do is spin up a Jupyter Lab server that you can connect to. And for those of you who are familiar with Jupyter Notebooks or RStudio, this is going to allow you to have that interface on the cloud. So, okay, and you might have to sign in again. If you just authenticated, you just have to press sign in automatically.
Hey, Eric, could you either switch to sharing just your browser or maybe increase the font size a little bit?
Sorry about that. I always forget how. Okay. Is that better? That? Okay. Cool. All right, so once you go to apps, and again, you see featured apps, and you'll see this Jupyter Lab Geospatial. It's gonna be version 3.6.3. I believe that's the most recent. Oh, this is version 4, but we'll stick with 3.6.3 for now. No, it works. So, you can change the analysis name if you'd like. I'm gonna leave it as Jupyter Lab Geospatial Analysis 1 for now. And this output folder, you can keep that the same as well. Your username. So if we go to next, this is where we can configure sort of the hardware that's going to be running the machine. So just for now, just for the demo, I'm just going to do 4 cores. Feel free to do 8, 16. I can try to push it. If you think you're going to need a lot of resources, then I'll just do 8 gigs of RAM for now. Disk space, we'll just do 32. Maximum CPU cores, we'll keep that at 40.
Yeah. So with these minimums that he's setting, these are going to give you at least that amount of resource. If you don't set any of these and you just leave it as default, I think the defaults are actually maybe 2 cores and 8 gigs of RAM. So it's okay to leave it as a default. But yeah, let's go ahead and set that right now.
Cool. So we'll go to next. And we'll see launch analysis down here. So good. We'll press launch. Okay, so does anyone have any questions up to this point? Any issues?
I'm seeing a lot of emails in the chat. I'm guessing those people are struggling a little bit.
Yeah, I sent everybody a reset on their passwords. Did any of those people that put their email in get the password reset email?
Looks like a few were getting it. I saw several that said that it worked and that they got in.
It looks like, Eric, that you may have just gotten a little bit ahead of some of the people who were trying to keep up. You might be able to just go back and reiterate some of those previous points.
Okay, yeah, I'll go back through it. I don't think you have to press create saved launch. Okay, so we go back to featured apps. Lab geospatial.
Pause right there because there was a question about the different possible things that people could open. Could you just take a second on this page and just describe some of the different options that people have?
Yeah, so a lot of these Jupyter Lab ones are just going to be different environments, like computing environments. You're going to have different packages installed, depending on what it is that you'd like to do. The Cloud Shell is just like a blank terminal that you can use. It's like an AWS EC2 instance. And then there's a couple different RStudio interfaces. You have Ubuntu desktop, so you can have a desktop emulator here. VS Code. So these are the featured ones. These are probably some of the most used, the ones with the most use cases. But there's tons of different apps. So you can look through. I think they should give a description when you choose them. Looks like maybe if you go to documentation. Yeah. So they give you some probably give you more of a description than others. But let me terminate this. I didn't mean to open up that Cloud Shell, so. But okay, let's just go back through the creation of this Jupyter Lab geospatial. Keep all this the same. Go to next. You can pick your minimum resources. Yeah, you don't have to press create, save, launch. You do not have to press this. I know there are a few questions about this, but just press launch analysis. I already have one going, so I'm not going to press it, but yeah, this is all you have to do. And then once that's launched, you should see a screen like this. For the sake of time, I think a lot of people are here, so I'm just going to press this. You're going to want to press this go to analysis button at the very top. This is actually going to connect you to the Jupyter Lab. Okay, so we press go to analysis. And then we're going to be in what's hopefully familiar to a lot of people, this Jupyter Lab interface. If it's not familiar, that's okay. It's pretty easy and intuitive. All right, so have we got at least a few people or several people to this point, whether they're inside the Jupyter Lab? Does anyone have any issues getting here? Cool. All right, so you can kind of explore in here again if you want a Python environment that already has a lot of packages installed. You go ahead and use this OS Geo tile. Yep, launch analysis, and then once it's launched, you could say go to analysis. So if you want to use RStudio, yep.
Eric, can I explain what's going on? Can you go back to the discovery environment real quick? And then can you open up the hamburger menu on the left so everybody can see what those things are? So what Eric has done is he's launched an app, which is essentially a container. And we have this list of featured apps like Jupyter and RStudio. This is a managed workbench. So the scheduler is then giving you a virtual machine, and it's putting whatever the application was that you asked to start on the virtual machine. And then after about 30 seconds, that thing should start and it should pop up in the analysis tab. So Eric, can you click on analyses there and it'll take us back to the full list. So you can see that Eric has one analysis currently running, and that's one that's got a few more icons there on the right. But you can see your analyses in here, and you can start and stop these or restart them after they've been stopped. And if you click on the name of the analysis after it's stopped, it'll take you to a folder in the discovery environment. So there's a data store inside of Cyverse, sort of like a cloud bucket, but it has a managed username, which is your user name. And that username is going to be visible to you like a hard drive or like a mounted folder inside of this running analysis. So I mentioned that this discovery environment is intended to make the cloud feel like your laptop. This is just that interface so that you can connect multiple computers to a single hard drive, which is where your data are, your data, your personal private data. When we go into this Jupyter Lab in a few minutes or into this RStudio, you're going to be on a separate computer that doesn't have any data in it yet. And you'll have to download the data from GitHub. And that's going to be the next step.
Yep. So as far as connecting your GitHub to the Jupyter Lab, and I guess just for the sake of time, I'm going to go through this sort of quickly, but if you have private repos, you have repos that aren't public to everybody, then you're going to need to add your SSH key. You're going to have to create an SSH key pair on this instance, and then you're going to have to add the key to your GitHub account. Okay, so I'm going to run through that pretty quick, and we've tried to make it pretty easy here. So the first thing you want to do is
Can we pause just real quick and see how many people are with us here? I think most people made it. I just want to make sure everybody has a Jupyter Lab open before we do this next step. And people are asking if you can zoom in a little bit, make the font bigger. So maybe could I have people, if you're not in here, let's assume everybody's in, and if you're not in, tell us in the chat that you're not in yet and that you need us to wait for just a second, and we can help you get up to this step. I'm seeing thumbs up and I'm in, which is awesome. Just want to make sure everybody is with us. Okay, I think we're good to go. I'm not seeing anybody freaking out in the chat yet, so please freak out in the chat.
Can I make one comment about the Slack channel? So we do have an ESIIL Slack workspace that we use. We will create a channel for the hackathon in an ESIIL workspace and invite folks to it. I would say for the pre-training.
I just created it called Hackathon 2023.
Cool.
And so I think that was some of the sub traffic as we were doing that in the chat.
All good, all good.
Yeah, great question, Eric. So no, even if you do a save launch, the key pair, you know, once you destroy this analysis, once it's terminated, all of, you know, your key pair is going to be deleted. So you're going to have to recreate this.
But Eric, that doesn't happen just because you close the browser window, right? The analysis.
No.
So
yeah, you have
if people are using the same thing for the hackathon, they'll still have their key pair.
Yeah, I wouldn't keep your analysis running until next week. We'll probably want to shut those down just to conserve resources. So if you've already added key pairs to your GitHub before, and you know how to do this, maybe just follow along visually. That way you don't have to add a key pair and then just delete it when we're done. So I'll just go through this really quick. The first thing you want to do is go to the left side of this toolbar, and you should see this Git icon. When you click on that, you'll see the Git app opens up inside JupyterLab. Once you're here, you should see these three options. If you don't, make sure that you press this file a couple times and get to your root directory, your home directory here. So press clone a repository, and then I'm gonna put this link in the chat. So go to the repo. So we're gonna clone a repo that's gonna create a key pair for you, basically. So let me put this in the chat. So if you go to clone, you're gonna want to put this, and because we don't have a key pair created yet, we have to use an HTTPS link. Oops. Not an SSH, right? So we're gonna put this HTTPS to this GitHub repo, and we're gonna press clone.
I didn't see it pop up in the chat.
Oh, sorry, I have my direct messages on. Let me go to everybody. Thanks, Ty. There you go. See that? Okay. So that should clone, and then if you go back to your files, you should see this Innovation Summit utils. If you press on that, then you should get into configure GitHub SSH.ipynb. Once you open up the notebook, it's going to ask you which kernel. These are native packages, so it actually doesn't really matter what you use, but go ahead and just do OSGeo. And if you're curious just about what's in here, you can read through it, but it's basically just creating a .ssh folder. It's gonna create a key pair. It's gonna add GitHub's IP to your known hosts. It's gonna do all that good stuff, and hopefully one fell swoop. So to execute this, press on the cell, hold shift and enter, or you can hold shift and press enter, or you can just press this play button. So I'll do shift and enter. First thing it's gonna ask for is your username, and then it's gonna ask for your email just to track the history. It's not actually super important. So once you input both of those things, it's going to say, okay, we generated a key pair. It's using 25519 encryption. It was saved to your ssh.github. So you have your private key and your public key. And then at the very end, it's going to print out your public key. Okay, so this is going to be what we have to put on GitHub. So if you've gotten to this point, at the very bottom, go ahead and copy this line, this whole line, starting with SSH, all the way to this last part. So we'll copy that. Then we're gonna need to go to GitHub. Let me increase the font here. And we're gonna need to go to settings, our profile settings. Yep. Let me slow down. So, all right, is anyone having issues getting to this point, opening up the script?
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
slow down.
We'll pause here and let everybody catch up. Erick, do you think you could just start over? I mean, and you don't need to run it again, but maybe just go back to and run through this little section again.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so once you open up the Jupyter notebook, the first thing you're gonna want to do is go to this Git icon on the left. This is gonna be for the Git widget inside of Jupyter Lab. So go ahead and press on that, and you should see an option to clone a repository once you're here. Okay. So if you choose clone, it's gonna ask you for a URL. Are you using the Earth Lab or the Jupyter Lab geospatial? Because not all of the analysis are going to have the Git app installed, but if you're using this geospatial analysis, yeah. So okay, so that's a good point though. Is that yeah, not every app is going to have this Git extension, but the Jupyter Lab geospatial will. So. If you haven't, if you chose an app that doesn't have this and you're familiar with the command line using Git commands, you could certainly do that.
Yeah, I just want to explain why. So this particular Jupyter Lab is an older version of Jupyter Lab, and the Git widget is still functional. The newest version of Jupyter Lab, the latest version, the embedded plugins haven't caught up. So there's not all the little side extra things.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a mismatch between the widget developers and the Jupyter Lab. So, Jennifer, yeah, that looks great in the chat. If you guys need some instructions, just a list of things, that's exactly what we need to do. So, okay, once you clone the repo, you're going to see this Innovation Summit utils folder in your file browser. Yeah, okay, so what this is accomplishing. So when you need to authenticate to GitHub, basically, yeah, thanks, Elsa. This is basically going to allow access for this virtual machine to your GitHub account and its private repositories. You're going to be able to prove to GitHub that the request you're making to them is a valid one from somebody who should have control over the account they're trying to access. This is accomplished with a key pair. In fact, GitHub completely deprecated password and username authentication when cloning repositories, pushing, pulling, things like that. So that's what we are doing now. This once we complete this, it will make all of your private repos public. It won't make them public, but you'll be able to access them from Cyverse. So only you will be able to access them. Yeah, because you're in a secure virtual machine.
Yeah, and I can explain. So these analyses that everybody's running right now, they are private only to you. So if anybody else were to try to copy the URL from Erick's screen share and try to access it, they wouldn't be able to access that URL. So he's in a secure environment. We're putting in our private keys so that we can connect to another secure GitHub private repo.
Yep, so this will make it so only you're able to access your repos. Okay, so does anybody not see this public key output yet? Again, once you open up this configure GitHub SSH notebook, all you have to do is run this and then input your username and email. But if everybody is here and has this copy to their clipboard, then I'll move on. You have to do this once per analysis. So during the hackathon, hopefully you only have to do it one time. You'll start your analysis at the beginning of the hackathon, do this once, and then it'll be good to go. Yeah, yep, and you'll be able to also access your GitHub from RStudio as well. Yep, because it's all in your home folder. So once we have this public key, so right, we just created it on our Cyverse VM, and now we have to connect it somehow. Can't get the public. Okay, so when you run this, what is happening? It's not printing out anything, or there's an error. If you can't get the public.
Yeah, do you maybe want to unmute and give us a little bit of description of where you're at?
Okay. All right, I think a lot of people are probably ready to go. And we can come back and try to fix that in a little bit. Okay, yep, so then just put in your username. And your username and your email aren't going to be really for authentication purposes. They're going to be more for when you make a commit. It's going to put in the Git history who it was that made that commit. It's kind of just for bookkeeping. Okay, so you go to your profile, go to settings, and then on the very left side, under access, you should see SSH and GPG keys. And this is where we're gonna have to add that public key to. Okay. So go to you see SSH keys, you should see new SSH key. You can call this, let's call this Cyverse. You can call it Cyverse Hackathon, whatever you want to name it so that it makes sense. Keep this key type at authentication key. And then all of that output, that very last line from Jupyter Lab, you're going to copy and paste. And you might be thinking something like, well, you're sharing your key, like to everybody right now on Zoom. Well, that's the whole point of a public and private key pair, is that this is my public key, and then my private key, I haven't even seen yet. I haven't even looked at the contents of it. The public key is okay less information giving out is always the best option, but it's not a big deal if your public key is seen by other people. So, all right, so we'll do add SSH key. It'll probably ask you to sign in again and just re-authenticate. And now we should see Cyverse, and we'll see it hasn't been used yet, but it is added. So now let's see if it worked. I should be able to clone a private repo with the SSH URL. So this would be the ultimate test. If you have a private repo, use the SSH URL. And then you can go back here to the Git widget, we do clone a repository. And instead of using HTTPS, again, now we're going to use the SSH URL because we have our SSH key made. And this is a private repo that I'm trying to clone, right? So let's see if that works. And it did. Okay. So again, this is a private repo. It's only available to me. The reason I was able to clone it onto Cyverse is because I've added an SSH key pair, and Cyverse knows it's me. Or GitHub knows it's me who's asking for the repo. So.
Eric, I had to click back to the home folder again. That some people might have missed that step and they're seeing a weird menu when they go back the second time. Can you just show them how to get the clone repository button to show up again?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So if you're inside, this is if you're inside of a Git repository, so right now I'm in Innovation Summit Utils. There's a hidden .git folder in this folder that you just can't see because it starts with a dot. But if that exists in the file system you're in, when you go to the Git widget, it's going to show you a bunch of Git options for that repo, like your history, committing, pushing, stuff like that. If you want to get back to just like the main Git menu where you can clone things, you need to, in your file explorer, you need to go to a repo. Sorry, you need to go to a folder that is not a Git directory. So if I press this little icon, it's going to go up to my home directory. In this directory here, there's no hidden .git folder. So when I go to the Git widget, I get this menu again that says, okay, you're not in a Git folder. Would you like to clone one, create one? So that's why that happens.
And if you're if you're into command line stuff, if Eric were to open a terminal here in the Jupyter Lab, he could go to probably see that hidden folder.
Yeah, if I go to efficiency details, yep, you can see the .git here. Yep.
There was a question about which repo are they cloning over, and we haven't actually pointed them to the repo that they're pulling in yet. So when you get to this last step about actually pulling the repo, I think we need to send it back to Elsa to get the proper link.
Yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that all together in about 15 minutes once you guys have had a chance to get together with your groups.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go over this some more in a little bit. Just for the sake of time, I think I'll hand it over to.
I see Jennifer put a comment about failed to clone, failed to fetch. Jennifer, do you think you could unmute and just give us a little more detail about how far you got and what that means?
Yeah, sure. I got to the end part. I created a repo in GitHub because I wasn't sure which one to use. So I created a private one. And then I tried copying the SSH over into it, and I'm getting a message saying failed to fetch. But I can see my, I think I can see some GitHub stuff in Cyverse now. So I'm not sure what's happening. But maybe I just need to wait for a GitHub repo from you folks.
Yeah, so there's nothing, you just created a brand new repo, there's nothing in it?
That's right.
You might not be able to clone a completely empty repo. Wow.
Okay.
I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. Does anyone have any problems cloning a repo that already exists?
Seems like somebody else had the same problem, and somebody else is. Oh yeah, people are saying it got fixed once the public key was all taken care of. But it looks like people need you to go through the public key entering into GitHub again.
Okay. I'll go over that really quick. So if we go back to this script, so the one that we ran, the configure GitHub SSH, you run this at the very bottom, you're gonna have this public key here. So go ahead, and this very last line is what you need to copy to your clipboard right now. So do Control copy or right click copy. And then when you get to GitHub, what you want to do is press on your little icon here, your profile icon on the top right, and scroll down to settings. Not to be confused with, like, if you're in a repo, you don't want to press on these settings here. You want to go to your profile icon and then press settings. And then on the very left, you can see the profile account. You're going to want to go to the access section. And then you're going to want to go to SSH and GPG keys. And what you should see is this header for SSH keys. And then if you have any keys already, you'll see them listed below. Okay, so Kenji said that you were, okay, so maybe you could. All right, anyway, so once you get to here,
Looks like there are some reports of people successfully cloning their new blank private repos.
Okay, so that's
And then there was a note about SSH. So maybe after the SSH key, do you want to talk again about the link to the repo? Make sure you get the right link to the repo that into cloning.
yeah. I guess what I will say really quick, it could be an issue because it's not being copy and pasted correctly, the public key. So just make sure when you click add new SSH key and you get to this screen and you give it a title, that you're copying this entire line here, starting with SSH and the encryption type all the way to your username. It should be Jovian at, some string here. But this entire public key has to be copied. Not just like this part. This part might look like, a secret or a password, but you need this entire thing here. Cool. Yeah, it could have just needed a second to get added, but yep. So you're just going to copy and paste in this whole thing here, and then press add SSH key. And I already have a key with the same public key, so it probably won't let me. But okay, once you've added it, so you'll go back, and you should see something like Cyverse here. You'll see when it was added, when it was last used. To test it, you're going to want to try to clone a private repository of yours. So if I go to my repositories, let's actually go to ESIIL. And I'll choose a public user portal database. Okay, so this is a private repo. Right, it says private right here, so only you should be able to access other people that GitHub gives access to. You should go to code here, this green button, and then you're gonna have, the default will be SSH, so you shouldn't have to change it, but there are 3 different options for cloning a repo. Since you've added your SSH key pair, you'll be able to use the SSH URL. So go ahead and press copy. You can come back to the Jupyter lab. Again, once you're in a folder that does not have a .git folder, that is not already a Git repo. So if I press this a bunch of times, it'll take me to my home folder. Go to the Git widget, clone a repo, and then I can paste that SSH URL. It's going to be git at GitHub, the organization name, the repo name. Cool. Yeah, include, okay. And we'll clone. So successfully cloned. Again, we were only able to do that because we had our SSH key pair. So how to navigate between, oh, okay. So if you're asking for the URL for that private repo, that's one of the private repos that I have access to. Yeah, okay. So go ahead and please clone.
Yeah, mine, but you won't be SSH'd into my repo either, so it probably won't work for mine actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think we only have access to it. So, so yeah, you'll only have the SSH key pair is only going to give you access to the repos that you own on GitHub or that you have given permission. So, oh, cool. Okay, so maybe that one was public, but yeah. So once you have all these repos cloned, all it does is create a folder in your home directory or wherever you cloned it. So you can go through all these. I can go to user portal database, then you can just use this file browser to get through. And I don't think,
Eric, could you quickly demo like going up a directory in the file?
oh yeah.
I think that.
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. So let me like actually go inside a bunch of folders here. So I'm like, I don't know, 6 layers into a directory right now on the file explorer. So there's a couple different ways to go back up to get back to your home folder. One is you can just click one of the directories in this path here to get to that specific directory. So if I want to go back to data, I just press data. I'm in data, sorry, so I can't. I press it again, I'm just going to stay here. If I want to go to tests, I just press tests. If I want to go back to instance, yeah, so there's a question in the chat about cloning private repos with HTTPS. So GitHub deprecated the ability to clone repos over HTTPS. Cloning private repos, you can still clone public repos, but they don't want to transfer repositories or sensitive data using HTTPS. They'd rather use SSH to transfer those. It's more secure, and they also didn't like people. They didn't want to have people using username and password to clone HTTPS. So if it's a private repo, you have to use the SSH URL, and you have to have your key pair added. So, okay, so you can click on these 2 things. You can click on paths here to get to those directories. But if you just want to go all the way back to your home directory, if you just want a total reset, you can press this icon here, and it will take you all the way back to home. So, okay. Yeah, thanks, Elsa. Yeah, directory and folder can pretty much be used interchangeably. So.
All right, I think we're going to do another check-in with everybody back on the Google Doc. And so if everybody could go back to that document, we're going to add a few questions about how people are getting along with this. Let me put that link back in the thing. There's Google Doc again. Yeah, so right now the questions here are, did you successfully get into the discovery environment? So give us a plus if you did or a minus if you didn't. Did you get into the Jupyter Hub? Give us a plus if you did or a minus if you didn't. Did you add an SSH key to GitHub successfully? Give us a plus if you did or a minus if you didn't. And I was able to clone a repository. Give us a yes if you did, or a plus if you did, or a minus if you didn't. All right, it looks like we got almost everyone, but we do have at least one minus all the way back at the discovery environment. So if that person wanted to message Nate Quarter, send a private message to Nate, he could try to set up a little side room to maybe get you up and running and help you through some problems that you're having. So that one person that wasn't even getting on the discovery environment yet, let us help you with that. Then it looks like if people got through that stage, they were generally pretty successful up until the SSH key. So I see, looks like 2 people, 3 people maybe sort of struggled with those last 3 steps. So A, don't stress. It's sort of the hard, weird part and is not super critical for your success. We'll help you get through those points. But let's see. Let's try to at least get the discovery environment person first into a breakout group, and then we maybe will go back and do some SSH key stuff with people in breakout groups in a little bit. But it looks like most people are coming along with us. Go ahead, Elsa.
Yeah, so I am planning to put everybody in breakout rooms in groups of 2 to work on this activity. And so when we're working on the activity, everybody will have an opportunity to again work on cloning repositories and using the discovery environment. I am making 1 room for troubleshooting. So again, if you contact Nate and let him know that you need troubleshooting, then we will pull you into that room and figure that out. Does that work for everyone? Okay. So I am going to make these breakout rooms, and so I want to go over briefly what you guys will be doing in the breakout room. Okay, so you can see this is our agenda. We're probably not going to get through all of this, and that's totally fine. But what you're going to do in the breakout room is this set of tasks right here. And so I'll put this in the chat now. I think you should still have access to it when we go into the breakout rooms, but if not, I will put that in here. And so what you're going to do is you're going to be in a group of 2. Only one of you should click on this link here, because you're going to be working on 2 people working on 1 repository. And so this is going to create a repository for you that contains 2 files that you can edit and for you to collaborate on. One of the files is for working with some LA temperature data that's also included in the repository. And the other notebook is going to be about analyzing that data once it has been wrangled and put into the correct format. So one person accepts the GitHub Classroom assignment, but then both team members should clone the GitHub repository into Cyverse using either Jupyter Lab or RStudio. And don't worry about this because we will go over it when we bring you back. But do make sure that both team members have the URL to their GitHub repository. So if I open up this link, which again, only one of you should do, it's going to have this accept this assignment page. And it's not a big deal also if both of you accept the assignment, just decide between the 2 of you which one of the repositories you want to use. So it's going to bring up this page. It says refresh this page to see updates. It should be pretty immediate that if you refresh the page, then you will get this link here. So you'll be following the steps here, and then you'll be able to get both the SSH and the HTTPS URLs here. Use the SSH one because we've got SSH set up, and here's the copy button. And again, we will go over how to do this. So if you're not figuring out how to do this in the breakout room, that is totally okay. What you can do instead is open up the notebooks here in GitHub and do this step 1. So you're going to talk to each other about what file format you want your data in, what columns do you need in your data, and what will the data in each column look like. And for reference, you're going to be making some monthly LA temperature data into annual LA temperature data from 1945 to present. Okay. You will also, as a group, choose which person will work on which notebook. So one of the notebooks is an R notebook and one of the notebooks is a Python notebook, but there should be enough instructions in there for anybody to complete either notebook. And I already said to plan what your intermediate data file will look like. Okay, so we're gonna do these breakout rooms for about 10 minutes. You can, in the breakout rooms, you should be able to use the ask for help feature in order to get someone from the facilitation team to come help you out. And like Ty says, the point of today is playing around with the discovery environment, playing around with GitHub, getting familiar with this stuff. And we're not expecting necessarily even any of you to walk away expert on doing all of these steps today. What we're trying to do is to get it so that next time we go over this, it goes a little bit faster, and the next time it goes a little bit faster, so that by the time we get to the hackathon, we can breeze through this part of the setup. Okay. So, all right, I put the link to the agenda in the chat. I'm going to do that again, and then I'm going to open up these breakout rooms.
Elsa, can I share my screen really quickly as I get into
Oh, right,
breakout rooms?
Rachel. Rachel, you're doing your thing. Yes.
Everybody take a deep breath. We've just covered a lot of information. So as we get ready to work together, I wanted to give some reminders about our values as we work together. So take a moment to just stretch in whatever way that looks for you as we prepare to get into our breakout rooms, and go ahead and review our values. A people-centered, kind, innovative, environmental data science and learning. All right, so I think we're ready now.
We have a raised hand. Like, or raise their hand as well, can ask a question.
I don't feel like they're not in here anymore.
Trying to teach people Cyverse in 15 minutes is difficult.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, I'm going to be problematic. So I'm actually in two places, but I'm only one person. Because I have two screens and only visuals on one. Sorry. I'm in room 11 and room 12, but I'm only going to be able to interact in room 12 and not room 11. So who's ever in room 11 is in there by themselves. Sorry to be a
I will put someone else.
Thanks for letting us know.
11.
I realized as soon as we went random, I was like, oh crap.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for helping us.
Yeah.
Hey, should I be in a breakout room?
You can go to room 11. I'm just kidding.
I can put you in one if you want, Lisa. I left.
Oh,
out
I'm
the-
fine. I'm fine. I just wondered.
I think we have someone else too.
Breakout room too.
Okay.
Looks like there's a couple still in here that don't have breakout rooms.
Yeah, I'm kind of moving people around. So, yeah, people should have breakout rooms, but not everybody has joined theirs. So,
Can we just so we don't forget, we like tell everybody to terminate their analyses at the end of this?
Yep. Good
yeah,
call.
great idea.
Hey, can I have a request? Erick, would you be able to go to room 2 and talk with Ian? He slacked me and had a question, and I wondered if you might be able to help him. And if it's something that like we need to set up a separate meeting for, don't hesitate to do that, and we can help with that.
For sure. Yeah. How do
Yeah.
I get to?
I think if you click on breakout rooms, or hold on.
I think I can do it. So which room do you want him in?
Can you send him to room 2?
Yes.
Thank you, Rachel.
Mhm.
Hi, I don't believe I ever got a breakout room join option.
Sorry, who's
Is
speaking?
that Matt? Matt Austin?
Austin?
Okay, I think that you had one, but yeah, I was just trying to figure that out.
I see you in room
so-
10. It says you haven't joined. Let's see.
But he'd be the only one in 10. What if you
Hmm.
stuck him in like another one?
Okay.
I have a warning here that somebody is in the waiting room. Right?
Oh,
Okay, Matt has been.
So I hope you guys notice my background. This is my dumpster fire workshop background.
With the easel logo.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
We should reserve this for later in workshops.
Yeah.
anyone else
Rachel's
need a breakout
Rachel's the
room?
one to yell at you for
Rachel,
mismanagement
did
of the
you
brand.
take care of? Did you?
This
take
is an
care of
official one. I got this from the site visit.
I just see a couple people here that do they need rooms?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Oscar, can you hear us? I see Oscar assigned to room 14, but I don't think that
Mm-hmm.
Rika is Rika's assigned to room 1. I'm gonna move them to 14 with Oscar. So Oscar and Rika, if you can hear us, go ahead and join the breakout room so you can get started on this.
All right. So in like 5 minutes, we bring everybody back and just have them shut down their machines and call it good for the day.
And I think your reassurance along the way has been really nice, everybody in the
Good.
chat and everything. So
Yeah.
It's a lot and it moves quickly. But
Mhm. And it's virtual. I mean, there's like a lot of elements to it.
Yeah, Elsa, do you want, when they come back, do you want them to like share anything out, or do we want to like, we wouldn't get,
Gotten so many unsolicited compliments in my life. It's great.
You need a YouTube star, 1 million views on YouTube.
At least 23 views on YouTube.
Right. Well, it looks like folks are making their way back in from the breakout rooms. And so thanks everybody for your participation there. We did add one more item to the Google Doc survey that we've kind of been building throughout the morning. And we're just curious, like, on like a level of confidence, like how confident are you in your ability to like walk through these steps again? The steps that Erick and Elsa kind of walked you through. Not confident, somewhat confident, very confident. Remember, we recorded this, so you could go back and watch it. We're going to make maybe a clean recording too that doesn't have all the stopping and starting, and so keep your eyes peeled for that. You wouldn't be asked to do this blindly. Like, you'll have some resources. I put a link in the chat to the doc too. We've got a few minutes left. I know that we want to walk folks through how to shut down the instance that you set up, and so I think either Erick or Elsa is going to walk folks through that. So we have one question from Jennifer in the chat about how to make individual cells run inside Cyverse. I don't know if that's something that we can answer here quick. So yeah, Elsa or Erick, do either one of you two want to take over in terms of showing folks how to shut things down, and we can try to get questions in the chat answered.
I'm going to volunteer Erick for that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let me go back to my desktop.
There's a request about how to hit the push button to recommit something. So maybe before you, on your way to shutting it down, you could commit some change real quick.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Sorry, I already terminated my analysis.
Yeah, no worries.
But
how about you just punt it till next week? Just because I think people are
okay.
probably at the end of a long 2 hours. So we'll show you how to shut it down, and then next week we'll review this really quickly, and we'll be pushing and pulling next week and make sure everybody's got it.
Yeah. Yeah, so during the hackathon, hopefully, you can just spin up one analysis and then keep it for the 2.5 days. But since it's going to be another couple weeks, we don't want to just have this running and use up the resources. So if you go back to de.cyverse.org, or if you already have this tab open, and then you go to your analysis here on the left side, you should see, most you might, or probably only have one here in the list, maybe you have 2 analyses. Go ahead and it should say running. So just check mark it. And on the right side here in the same row.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you already stopped that one.
Yeah. This one, I just stopped a little bit ago, but if it's running, it should have a little, is it red? A little red.
Yeah,
X.
and if you click on the more actions, I think you'll see all the options.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess. No.
So, and you could relaunch it, but if you relaunch,
I want to add a point. I'm seeing some of the comments in the chat. So you're starting a virtual machine and you're running your analysis and you're adding your GitHub private key and whatnot. When you turn this thing off, it is going to go poof into the ether and disappear. So if you have not pushed your changes back up to GitHub or downloaded, you can actually download files out of this thing to your local computer. But if you don't commit your changes, when you turn this thing off, it's going to go away. This is no different than sitting at a library computer and putting your USB key in it. When you get up to leave, you take it with you. So there are some other aspects, like with the data store, you can copy files into that, but we'll do that another day.
yeah, once you terminate, it's gone. So.
Eric, I need to terminate mine. Well, why don't I share my screen real quick and just show people, since my button will actually work.
Sure.
And while Ty's doing that, I just want to add, if you want to run this thing for a few days, it'll run for 72 hours without turning it off. And you see Ty actually has an hourglass, so he can extend it for another 3 days. So if you do want to run a long-term analysis, say it's going to take a few days to run, you can push the time out for a few days. Just remember though, you're burning hours every hour on your allocation. You leave this thing running. So you want to mind your minutes.
So here I am, terminating. Ding. Easy as that. Okay, I just want to reiterate the things that we want you to have gotten from today are getting into the discovery environment and interacting your discovery environment with GitHub. I know there were some questions about the final push. We'll deal with those next week. So next week is dealing with real data. So we're going to talk about some of the data that we prepared for the hackathon, how to get those data in and out of the discovery environment quickly, and how to interact that with GitHub. And then the third week will be AI and sort of how to use AI and analytics on some of those data that we prepared for you. So does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns with the last 5 minutes before we end today?
As folks are leaving, there's no homework, Jennifer. No.
just come to the next one. And I would say too, as folks are leaving, just make sure to give a round of applause to Erick and Elsa for all of their hard work today. Thank you both so much, and for Tyson for coming and hanging out. We appreciate you. Ty, thank you so much for helping manage the chat, and Rachel, thank you for all of your work, keeping us organized. Virginia, thank you for coordinating, and thanks to our audience members as well. Thanks Lise and James and Lily, the Synovias, for being here, Earth Lab, the ESIIL friends. We look forward to seeing everybody next week, same time, same place. And again, if you were stuck or lost, don't sweat it. This is not meant to be stressful. We are here to help you. We're happy to set up office hours or anything to help folks. We will have a recording of today's work available so that you can go back and check that out as well. So thanks again, everybody.